Some of the president's allies on Wall Street, in corporate America, and in Congress are questioning whether the billionaire should continue to do so many media interviews. Four sources familiar with the matter tell NBC News. Trump allies have called and conveyed to Mr. Trump and the White House that Musk either has to be taken off air or needs to be more scripted.
As a direct consequence of his incompetence, corruption, greed, and extremism, Elon Musk's approval rating and popularity have plummeted, alongside Tesla stock. It's gotten so bad that top Trump allies are begging Trump to muzzle Musk before he makes things worse for not only Trump, but the Republican movement in general. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we got a lot to dig into, all right? But I want you to see this clip, which kind of beautifully captures the sentiment that even key Republicans and key Trump allies are having about Musk.
Meanwhile, across the country, elected officials are feeling the heat from voters over Elon Musk's efforts to slash federal government agencies.
We have sent you to Congress for decades. We expect you to follow through for what we Iowans really want our government to do, and not to have a federal government that is being dismantled by this President Trump and Elon Musk.
Yeah, I know.
Please stand up for what's right and do your job.
After his election, then President-elect Trump told NBC News, quote, "We're not touching Social Security." But now, after several comments from Elon Musk,
Social Security is the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
some of the president's allies on Wall Street, in corporate America, and in Congress are questioning whether the billionaire should continue to do so many media interviews. Four sources familiar with the matter tell NBC News. Trump allies have called and conveyed to Mr. Trump and the White House that Musk either has to be taken off air or needs to be more scripted. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
So that's how you know it's bad, right? Again, and I want you guys to consider this. Again, we've got a lot to dive into, but Elon Musk is the world's richest man. He controls Twitter, which is as big as Instagram or Facebook or anything like, no, but it is an extremely influential media organization. Okay. He is also politically active. He has his cult of personality surrounding him, and he is leveraging his money and his clout in ways that we have simply never seen billionaire donors before. The closest analog would be the robber barons of the early 20th century, and not even they were in the White House as much as Elon Musk is. Elon Musk is effectively the co-president, but he is so politically incompetent. His threat level comes from the amount of money he has and his influence over Trump as a consequence of that money. Okay, so let's dig a little bit deeper. Trump allies pressed the White House to dial back Elon Musk's media interviews over his Social Security jabs. After his election, Trump told NBC News that we're not touching Social Security other than to make it more efficient, but Musk, who now wields enormous power in his role cutting government spending, has recently made comments critical of the program that are coming into conflict with Trump's promise and worrying members of the president's own party. These concerns have prompted some Trump allies to question whether the billionaire should continue to do so many media interviews. Four people familiar with the matter told NBC News. A particularly problematic remark came from Musk's conversation with media personality Joe Rogan in late February, in which he described social media as the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. A couple of weeks later, the billionaire once again went after Social Security, this time in an interview with Fox Business host Larry Kudlow. Musk, when discussing big entitlement spending he deemed wasteful or fraudulent, said the program was, quote, the big one to eliminate. Musk pointed to a 2024 report from the Government Accountability Office that estimated the entire federal government could lose between $233 billion and $520 billion annually to fraud. Quote, the waste and fraud is in entitlement spending, which is most of the federal spending, is entitlement, so that's the big one to eliminate, he said. A Trump advisor acknowledged that they were very aware of, quote, outside concern around Musk's comments. Trump allies, including some on Wall Street, in corporate America, and Congress, have conveyed to the White House and to the president directly that Musk either has to be taken off the air or needs to be more scripted. A White House official who, like others in this article, requested anonymity to speak candidly, said they were sympathetic to the views of some Republicans who see Musk's comments on Social Security as potentially problematic and worrying to some senior citizens. Quote, of course they don't want their Social Security cut, so if they hear something on the news that Elon Musk is saying, that we should do something with Social Security, of course there might be some concerns. But the only concern they have to worry about is what the President of the United States is saying and what he's doing. We haven't touched Social Security. We're not going to touch Social Security. The White House official said Musk's personal opinions about Social Security have no impact on Trump's policies. Quote, at the end of the day, Trump has full trust in Elon Musk's decisions. The reality is everything that Elon is doing when it comes to Social Security is just to improve it. But let's stop right there. So kind of contradict yourself. Oh, Musk has no influence over Trump, but Trump has total trust in Elon Musk. Well, these are mutually exclusive sentiments. You don't trust somebody who has no influence over you. You don't give them extraordinary power and discretion and latitude if you don't trust them and if they don't influence your opinion. All the evidence weighs heavily to the contrary, that Musk has enormous, inordinate, perhaps unprecedented and unparalleled influence individually over Donald Trump. And given that he's unelected and unaccountable, and the world's richest man with who's replete with corrupt conflicts of interest and corrupt incentives, that's a big freaking problem. So that's what you see here. A Republican lawmaker who was not familiar with calls to the White House said Musk's disparagement of Social Security has unnerved people nonetheless. Quote, it does need to be reformed, the lawmaker said. Without reforming Social Security and Medicare, both programs will collapse and take the government down with it. But the last thing we need to talk about is disparaging the system. It's not a Ponzi scheme. It's just an entitlement program that needs to be reformed. The more of these Musk interviews, the more of the discussion we'll have. I think the entire 2026 campaign will be a referendum on Musk if the billionaire's poll numbers continue to drop, this person added. You will see ad after ad with the chainsaw. Okay? So that's the context for this. I also want to remind you that in poll after poll after poll after poll, though people love the theory of DOGE or like the theory of DOGE, a government agency that's dedicated to identifying waste, fraud, and abuse and cutting it, because who's pro waste, fraud, and abuse? DOGE in reality is wildly unpopular, and Musk even more so. Okay? When people say they want to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, they want a constitutional system, so one that is enshrined in the Constitution, that doesn't defy it, that is accountable, right? So that there's checks and balances, there's accountability, we know who to talk to, we know to ask the questions to, we know who to blame, right? Transparency, so that is fully, brought to the public's eye, and surgical. This isn't a private corporation. This is not Tesla. This is not SpaceX. This is not Twitter. Elon Musk does not have the right, morally or civically, to go in and take a hatchet. If he wants to do that with his own company, that's his prerogative. But when you're dealing with earned benefits that you pay into and you're going to collect at the most vulnerable stage of your life, then the people messing with it have an obligation to be precise and damn near perfect. And Musk and DOGE have been the exact opposite. So they deserve all the shit that they're getting and even more. They deserve it. And if you look at the polling, DOGE in practice and Musk in reality, people are pissed, including an increasing number of Republicans, because they don't like this. They don't like the recklessness, the incompetence, the stupidity, the dishonesty. But having said all that, the other thing I want to point out is that Elon Musk right now is attempting to, I don't want to say reassert because it's not like he's lost it, but shore up to firm his control over the GOP. And through the GOP and Trump, the entire country. Okay, and we're actually seeing this play out in a specific election in Wisconsin. Okay, I actually did a video about this a couple of weeks ago. I called it the most important election you've probably never heard of, and indeed it is. Okay, so as Axios discusses, Elon Musk's group playbook in Wisconsin's court race. Elon Musk has spent millions on the court race for a single seat on Wisconsin's Supreme Court. Now the billionaire's political group is offering the GOP candidate free advice. Get Trumpier. The Wisconsin contest, a nationalized proxy fight between the political parties and billionaire benefactors, is a referendum on Donald Trump. It's the first major election of Trump's second term and could decide the balance of power on the swing state's highest court. For Democrats, the April 1st election quickly has become a way to harness anger at the president. For Republicans, it's a test of trying to turn out Trump voters when he's not on the ballot. The court election will determine the tilt of an ideologically divided bench in a purple state where state-level decisions carry national implications for abortion rights, legislative redistricting, and election laws. If Republican Brad Schimmel wins, and that's the guy that Elon Musk is backing, the 7-member court will have a conservative majority until at least 2026. If Democrat Susan Crawford wins, the court will have a liberal majority until at least 2028. Liberals have held the majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court since 2023. By the numbers, Schimmel is trailing Crawford by 48-43, according to a polling memo conducted for Musk's political committee, Building America's Future. That's an improvement for Schimmel, who was 13 points behind Crawford 2 weeks ago. Trump isn't on the ballot, but he's a major issue, if not the issue. The survey conducted by pollster Ryan Tyson indicates Schimmel has an enthusiasm problem with Trump voters and needs to turn them out. The electorate also looks less Trumpy than in 2024. The poll model's partisan turnout the poll models partisan turnout that looks a lot more like 2023, the last major state Supreme Court race in Wisconsin in which Democrats won. And folks, this is huge. As I discussed in that video, I want you to consider this. Wisconsin is perhaps the most purple of swing states, even more so than my own state, North Carolina. They went for President Obama in 2012. They went for Donald Trump in 2016. They went for President Biden in 2020, and then they went back to Trump in 2024. Wisconsin has 2 senators, like all states, but one is a Republican and one is a Democrat. That's extremely rare, okay? If you look at registered, like people based on party registration, it's split 1-to-1. But when Democrats lost power and Republicans took power in the state under Governor Scott Walker back in the 2010s, they worked aggressively to reshape institutions to entrench a disproportionate level of Republican control. There was one election where Democrats effectively won in terms of votes cast. They won a stunning amount, but Republicans actually kept a supermajority. Like, it became the case in Wisconsin in terms of its internal composition because of gerrymandering and because of what they did to entrench their institutional power, that Democrats could turn out, could just crush Republicans in turnout, cast more ballots than Republicans, and Republicans would still maintain control because the scales were weighted so heavily in their favor. 2020, by the way, when Trump was in office, he tried to use Wisconsin to help overturn the results of the 2020 election. And it was only because the then conservative Wisconsin majority had one defection, one conservative judge on the Wisconsin Supreme Court joined with the liberal minority to make it a liberal majority, again, plus him, to kick out Trump's challenges. Had that not happened, who knows what the hell would have happened as a consequence of an election that Trump lost. It is the most important election you've probably never heard of. And Musk is basically the engine behind Brad Schimmel, who is a MAGA Republican, who has campaigned, or rather been, I think he was at an event with, it was Don Jr., if not Elon Musk. I know Don Jr. Charlie Kirk was the other one. This guy's MAGA. So this is really, really important, especially if you live in Wisconsin, to make sure you turn out. Early voting has already begun, and the election itself is properly on April 1st, but we have to defeat Elon Musk. Imagine how much more bold he will be and more dangerous and powerful he will be if he feels that he can single-handedly shift the outcomes of not just presidential elections, but also important elections like these that have lower profile. It will give him carte blanche and a boldness which will probably, quite frankly, terrify other top Trump allies and key Republicans, because he will be taking over the Republican Party. It's really dangerous stuff. We have to keep an eye out for it. But there you have it. Elon Musk is so incompetent, so dishonest, so extreme, so radical, and has been a polling anchor around Trump that top Trump allies are begging Trump to muzzle him, to silence him, because he's that much of a liability. We can help make that a reality by rejecting the Musk-backed candidate in this Wisconsin Supreme Court and further doom Musk politically. That should be the goal, because the Musk-Trump alliance, as stupid as it is, as risky as it is, as extreme as it is extremely formidable. You have arguably the two most powerful men on earth. Two very rich men, one the richest man on earth. That's incredibly dangerous. So let's help deal it a decisive blow by electing Judge Susan Crawford on April 1st in Wisconsin and rejecting Musk's very sinister influence over our politics. Here's our first attempt to do so after the last election. So in the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.